All right, there we go. So hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast Twitch channel. My name is Michael, and we are tonight for a special big bad edition of Detention. And joining me as not always is not Chris. Chris is out on a work trip, but I have an exceptionally well-suited fill-in co-host, and that is Moe. Moe, say hello to everyone.
Hey, I'm Mo, and I feel like going into my show and tell spiel.
Well, I was about to do that for anybody who's not already familiar with Mo. Mo has been our most recent show and tell host. He's basically just taken that on. He's been running it all himself. He's like soliciting guests. He's dealing with the cold calls we sometimes get for wanting to be guests, and he's picking and choosing what he wants to talk about, which is kind of the deal. When I say, hey, I need someone to do co-host this show, my end of the bargain was you get to pick what you want. You get to highlight who you want. You don't have to interview anyone you don't want to. It doesn't have to be, there's no like we don't get paid for them. They're not advertising
Right.
anymore. So I definitely want to start with that a little bit. What has it been like? I mean, you've already been a podcaster, you're a game designer. It's not like this is brand new, completely brand new for you, but what has the experience of being a show and tell host been like for you? Positives, criticisms, what are your thoughts?
Criticisms, there are just way too many people with cool, interesting stuff in the space, you know. I came to the table knowing like, okay, I know a good like 10, 15 people who would be awesome interviews. And so we could bring in some ringers and then like I could go and find the rest. And between the people who email because they have a Kickstarter going, and then like kind of cool stuff I see on YouTube and on Twitter, like there's just so much awesome stuff going on. And honestly, it seems like you could be doing this for years and only get caught up to now, you know.
Oh yeah. I completely
So
agree. It's cool, but it is almost overwhelming how many different projects are out there. Like we can't cover them all. Like even if that's the only thing we did at the RPG Academies, we just interviewed creators who were creating stuff. We'd have to release an episode a day, and we still couldn't cover everybody. There's so much out there.
The cool part is, as a game designer, I've had a great opportunity to hear about some awesome games, learn about some awesome games. It's easy to get kind of, between your day job and your family job, and kind of doing the basic necessities to keep life running and stay healthy. It's easy to get caught up in your own head, and this has really forced me into kind of talking about the thing with people. And it's funny because a couple of the recordings, we press stop on the recording, and then we kind of get into the real crunchy bits. Because I honestly don't know how much people want to hear about the odds of D12s versus D10s, when that is the thing. Or do you add +1 to a dice pool or +1 to a 2d6, fail success, or limited success range. I don't know how people care. So people, audience, if you really want to hear more crunchy stuff, please let me know. I've really tried to kind of encourage the guests to kind of keep it fun, talk about how the game feels, because at best, we're playing these games to have really great experiences, whether they're a distraction from life or, just to kind of kick off some steam, or, to really kind of go to a place, a fantastic place, as it were. And, tell a cool story. And as the game designer, it's really easy to kind of, oh, do I want cards? Do I want dice? Like get into like this level of minutia that, if your game works, nobody really cares about.
Right.
But
I will say for me personally, I'd like some of that. As an amateur game designer myself, I don't actually, if you were to do like a whole episode, but just told like, hey, this is going to be our crunch episode, I probably would listen to it. But just like from a high level, because I am very curious about the process of creation, whether it's writing a story, right? Starting a podcast, running a convention,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So if someone like sweated for 3 days over should it be a D10 or D12, and here's why I finally decided one way or the other, I think there's some entertainment and some life lessons to be learned there. But I do think that I don't think our show is designed to deep dive into all of that. But
Right.
I wouldn't say maybe leave recording on a couple extra minutes, and then you can always edit it out if you decide you don't want it.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
so
I think Michael gets 2 votes.
I
So we have 2 votes for more crunch.
that's right.
If anybody else has a vote.
Yeah, you can hit us up on Twitter, on Blue Sky, or email the show, the RPG Academy at gmail.com. So
Yep.
now, when Tom decided he needed to step away a little bit, again, Tom's still part of the family. He's still coming to Catacon. He still helps us out, but life sometimes gets in the way, as has been
Absolutely.
wont to happen before. And I basically just put it on Discord, like, hey, I don't want I say all the time, like, Detention is my favorite show that we do because it's the easiest. There's zero prep. We
Mhm.
just jump on here and talk, and I love to do that anyways. There's just happens to be microphones and cameras.
Right.
But if there's anything that we do that I think there's value to, I think it's show and tell. It
Mm.
used to be faculty meetings, but I feel like I've said everything I need to say, and now I'm just repeating myself. So I
Mm.
get self conscious about trying to give advice. I'm like, just go back and listen to episode 12. But I
Right.
think show and tell really is a service to the community because as a small time game designer who's looking for places to promote my stuff, we offer a platform for designers to come on and talk about their thing and get some additional followers, maybe get some additional money. Like, I don't know that we've ever been a make or break for anybody, but I like to think we've helped a lot of people at least a little bit. So I really didn't want it to go away. Out of all the shows that were in jeopardy when Tom needed to take a break, show and tell
Mhm.
was the one that I was like, I don't want this one to die. So I just want to say again, I've said it personally, but I'll say here, thank you for stepping into that role. I really appreciate it. I think you're crushing it. But you also said it probably wasn't a forever gig. I think you
Yeah.
committed originally till the end of this year, and then you would
Yeah.
reevaluate. And any
Yeah,
thoughts
let's
on?
let's have the people vote too, you know. Yeah, I it's funny. I listen to a lot of these shows, and kind of my like I've been working in the podcast space as my day job.
Mhm.
So it's been really weird because normally I'm behind the scenes, and things go great if you don't hear my voice.
Mhm.
So this has been a great exercise of just doing reps and getting like figuring out what my voice sounds like. The most horrible thing in the world, editing my voice.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm actually absolutely enjoying myself. So happy to talk offline if we need to have a conversation. But
Okay. Well, again, I tell people the secret to my success in any way, shape, and form has been that I have found a way to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am, who
Mhm.
are passionate, and who are willing to do things that help my agenda. Whether that was when I was working in retail and security and hired people, podcast to Catacon. So as long as you want to do show and tell, it is yours to do. But the moment you're like, I'm done, I won't, there'll be no hard
Yeah,
feelings because I get it's work and it's work that we really don't get paid for.
yeah,
And it becomes a lot of work. So I just, again, thank you for stepping in. I hope you're having fun. I really do
I
hope you're
am.
enjoying it. But if you need a break, if you need a permanent break, just don't hesitate at all to say, hey, I think I've done my reps. I'm ready for a new regimen.
Right, right, right.
Absolutely. I will once again call out, or maybe I'll take it over myself. We'll see how things are going.
The most interesting thing is that so many people have these weird approaches to what a role-playing game should be. I grew up, my friend had a red box of D&D, but we never played that because he got the hardcover books,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. And I always thought role-playing games should be around fighting.
Mm.
And, we're gonna kind of roll dice and have combat and like do the thing. And just people are doing such weird and interesting stuff with role-playing games and finding conflict in all these weird, cool places. And I just did I don't know if it's out yet, but I just did an interview with a guy who, it almost turned into therapy. I
Mm.
was like, what's the theme of this game that is about, an alien invasion? Because you could say alien invasion and it means all these things. And he was like, it's pod people. It's, people being replaced by aliens. but you play the alien. And he figured it out. He's like, I'm from I think somewhere in Europe. I came to America and people think I'm an American until I talk.
Mm,
And he's like, so actually, maybe this is about me and my immigrant experience. I was
right.
like, wow, that is so interesting. And, he gamified it and, people kind of show up and tell different stories.
Yeah. Again, very cool. I'm really liking the choices you're making, and I hope people are still listening. Certainly haven't got any complaints. No one has
Yay.
emailed and said, "Hey, this Mo guy's got to go." But if you want to email the show and tell us anything positive, the rpgacademy@gmail.com.
What?
But the other thing we wanted to do tonight is you just got back from Big Bad Con, uh,
Big Bad Con.
which is a gaming convention, not dissimilar to a Catacon, though I think you're a few degrees larger than we are. A little, I
Mm.
don't know, more established. It's also like, isn't it like California?
It's in California. It's in San
Yeah,
Francisco,
you got a
right next
bigger
to the airport.
population to draw from than I do in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm just gonna say that's why we're not as big. But you got to do some really cool stuff there. You got to meet some really cool people.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be a slightly different detention because Chris isn't here. We're probably not going to follow the same segments that we usually do. I just wanted to talk to you about your experience at Big Bad Con. I'm going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about my stuff because that's what I do. So just tell me, was this your first Big Bad Con? Have you been there before?
So this was my second Big Bad Con, and I went last year after hearing this was the very best con in the world from people in 2018 and 2019. Like it was like they were like, don't go to Gen Con, don't go to any other con, just go to Big Bad Con. And that didn't make sense to me. Like
Mm.
it did not compute. And so last year I decided, COVID was kind of over enough and I was just going to go check it out. And like I got there and it was weird.
Okay.
um so I've been to lots of cons and some of you may only hear me on the podcast and you may not know that I'm a black guy. And I've been a black guy in the RPG space for a couple decades now. And, like that's not a big deal. It's a non-issue most of the time. But kind of in the 90s, I had enough experiences that were uncomfortable that I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to cons anymore.
Mm.
Um, you know, there I grew up in the Bay Area. There are dozens of gaming groups. You get to the point where all the stuff going on in town, what night of week, who's rolling what dice, and people are calling you or not calling you to be in games, and it's a scene. It's a real scene. Um, and I went to Big Bad Con, and everybody was so nice, and everybody was so welcoming, and everybody was so like bending over backwards to make sure everybody was included. Um, I swear my first instinct was they were doing it wrong. you know? And I realized kind of maybe I was sitting with a little Stockholm syndrome of, kind of being able to go in and like prove you knew all the rules before you sat down at the table, and even go and I used to play Champions, I used to play D&D. Like you play games where there's almost a one-upmanship kind of thing going on at some of these tables with strangers where you're trying to outcool other people, all the while knowing like what we're doing, none of us are cool. And
Fair.
so yeah, I didn't get any of that at Big Bad Con last year, and it definitely I went home thinking about it a lot and just kind of what my expectations from a con were. And yeah, I went back again this year, and it's a really cool weird place. um I don't know how the scene is out where you're at, but I got out of role playing for about 15 years. And in California, when I got back into role playing, the first thing that kind of clicked for me is that suddenly role playing was hella gay.
Mm.
You know, a lot of LGBT people in this space. I don't say that in a bad way, you know. I'm not. That's not a complaint, but it's remarkable how, you know, there's so many people who, you know, are, you know, letting you know they're trans. There's so many people who are letting you know um that they're gay, that you know, the pronouns. I first encountered pronouns in the RPG space. You know, it feels like it has really spilled over into the rest of the world. And that sort of thing is really turned up to a 10 at Big Bad Con, you know. Like it's inclusion in every way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
They fly people from like part of the they get sponsors
Mhm.
to make sure that like people who can't afford to go to Big Bad Con can make it to Big Bad
Right.
Con, including, you know, helping people with visas to come into the United States. You know, like it is huge. Now, um, Big Bad Con is run by Evil, the guy who runs Evil Hat Games.
Uh, Fred something?
I want to say Sean Nittner.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so Fred is also a Evil Hat dude.
Okay.
But I just feel like he has a little more access than maybe a Catacon does
Oh, yeah.
in the RPG space.
Just a scotch. Yeah.
But you know, they also get you know, D&D and Critical Role and all these other big, you know, heavy hitters in the space, Modifius, um, to contribute.
Mhm.
And so people they get these big sponsors, and you know, they have a list of people and they're like, hey, these are the people we were able to fly here for free from across the country and around the world. And you know, a lot of these people are game designers. And you know, when I start talking about like I like cool weird stuff, like you see some really cool weird stuff coming from abroad, and people who are just really geeky about like these elements of gaming that, you know, I feel like a lot of game design these days is kit bashing. You know, it's like, oh, I played these 3 games and they all have a piece that I like, and I'll put them together and I'll
Right.
call it my game, you know. And people, you know, they are uh, um there I can't I don't I'm not gonna try not to ruin her last name, but Palazan. She is a designer who has worked on Blades in the Dark supplements,
Okay.
and she worked on Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Um, you know, I heard her give a panel on gameable lore. That is to say, making a mechanical thing out of an agreement everybody at the table comes up with, you know, and kind of why this is important, why this is engaging, and why this makes for a better play experience. And it was just so wild because she explained it, a thing that we kind of do at the table,
Mhm.
and we kind of sometimes we forget to do. And you know, our gaming experiences sometimes can be uneven because we're like, oh, you know, maybe I should have done the thing, you know. And she really broke it down and explained why this is important. And I was just like, huh, who knew?
Yeah, I, I've said this before. Like, I am not trained to be a writer. Like, I am
Mhm.
terrible at grammar. I've yet to find a sentence I cannot find 2 places for a comma to go. Like, it's just I write like I talk, and I talk in a very sort of natural, colloquial sort of tone.
Right.
But I'm a good writer. As far as like I can make you feel what I want you to feel. I will create characters that you identify with. I'm really good at dialogue, but it's just because I read so much. Like I was
Right.
from a little kid, I've always read. So there's lots of things that I do as a writer that I can't tell you why I do them, but I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
mimicking all these other writers that I
Mhm.
have read. And when it came to designing Action 12 Cinema, it's kind of the same thing. I've played lots of games, mostly D&D, but I've I think I've played somewhere 50, 60, 70 different games over the course of the last 12 years through
I
Academy.
mean, just on this channel.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a lot of experience. So there are lots of things like, well, I like that, but I don't like that. But I can't do what she did and say, here's why I like that. It's just like that feels good or that doesn't feel good. So
Right.
I appreciate anyone in any capacity or space, organization, whatever, that can clarify things you're already doing, or you're recognizing when they're missing. Like you said, sometimes you play a game, you're like, that was great. And sometimes you play a game like that didn't feel right. I don't know why. Like we had fun, but there was something missing. And
Right.
someone to be able to go, here's probably what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Super valuable. So I kind of wish, I don't know, were any of these recorded? Do you know, are they available online anyway?
I complained.
Okay.
Very politely that I wish, because they have you set up your schedule before you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I set up my schedule and kind of wasn't really aware of the panels.
Yeah.
I saw Pam at a panel last year.
Okay.
And so like I was very aware of her presence, and I follow her on Twitter, and I like reading what she writes because she's smart. I like smart people.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, like it's that whole embarrassment of riches. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many cool things going on. You can't do it all. And yeah, they said there was a way that they didn't want things to have to be overproduced. They said the panels were going to be good and polished, but they may be a little frank. And so they were not going to record them. And
Okay.
I was like, like, I'm glad you're making that decision. It's not the decision I like,
Right.
but
No.
you're offering a certain product. And so
And
I
there
get it.
is something to be said for a shared experience that is
Mhm.
just for the people there.
Absolutely.
And it's not just a protection. Like if I say something stupid, I don't want the internet to hear it, but it does make it valuable. And I'm sure, just like a CatCon, I want more people to come to a CatCon next year than come this year. And those are the types of things that'll be like, this was an awesome talk. You come
Mhm.
next year, you can hear it, but that's the only way you're going to hear it. There is a
Right.
marketable value in that I
Absolutely.
don't mind. How many people do you know, or roughly would say how many people attend Big Bad
I
Con?
think they had, so this year I think they had more than 1,000. That is to
Okay.
say, I think they sold out. They
Okay.
reached their maximum. And I think I'm projecting. I have no idea. I'm not one of the facilitators or anything, but it felt good. It didn't feel overcrowded, which, in the post-COVID world is a real thing. And yeah, I stayed at a hotel across the street
Mm-hmm.
from where it was held, and that hotel was full. But, you didn't feel like people had to like go for miles and miles
Right.
distance to get there.
Yeah, I would have thought it was
Um,
bigger than that, honestly, because which I probably just follow the right people on Twitter,
well,
because a
well, let
lot
me
of people were talking about it and coming out of it. I would have thought it was like maybe 5,000 people, maybe even
well
10.
let me tell you, it is very it. So everything I said, I think is true.
Mm-hmm.
It is also the sexy party.
Ooh,
you
okay.
know so these are a ton of the streamers that you have seen and or heard of, a lot of the big characters on Twitter that have the huge followings. Game design, Vincent and McGay Baker held a breakfast talk
Mm.
2 days in a row. For those who don't know, they invented Powered by the Apocalypse with their Apocalypse World game, which apparently grabbed the industry by the throat and inspired hundreds of rip-offs and remakes, of which I designed one.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very, and they came with, they I hate to say invented, but their game had an approach that like really suits me as someone who doesn't want to read the book, who wants to sit down and play the game and have fun. And they kind of have packaged together some mechanics that do that very well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there was that. There were a bunch of people with the big games. I played a Coyote and Crow. The
D12 based system.
a D12 based system. That was a Kickstarter's like smash hit. What, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
They made more than $1 million with one of the creators. You know, so like it, like I ran into Matt Mercer more than a couple times. I ran into several people who are podcasters from podcasts I really enjoy, like Three Black Halflings, like Dimension 20. I ran into a couple people from Miskatonic University. I ran into Bridget from Miskatonic
I
University.
saw your tweet about that.
And yeah, like it was a lot of the who's who. And so you hear a lot about Big Bad Con because a lot of the people go have very large microphones.
Gotcha. So yeah, so
and
sort of
megaphones.
outsized media, but that's, I mean, again, it's going to help them grow. Now, again, there's millions. I'm not exaggerating. There are millions of small gaming conventions across the country, across the world, as I know, because I try to schedule one, and it's really hard to do. But the ones that people are most familiar with, probably Gen Con is the biggest, at least in North America. It is the largest gaming convention in North America, and it's sort of the way I've always heard it. It's the industry event. If you are in game design, board game, card game, whatever role-playing game, that's the one you go to because it can make or break your career. You're going to do the most sales. You're going to do the releases. It's work, work, work. Then you have Origins, which is in Gen Con was like 80,000 people this year, 70,000. It's like huge.
Wow.
Origins is in Columbus, and it's about 20,000 people, and it's the game convention you go to as a designer when you want to play. Like, it is much more laid back. You're not there to work. You're there to have fun, maybe network, but it's not like work, work, work. And then like Academaniacs, jumping way down, like 500 people if we're lucky this year, it's the game you go to for the GMs who just love games and they want you to play the game they love. Like that's why our games are so successful, because we don't give free badges for running games. If you run 12 hours, it's just like, I love this game. You should play it. Let me show you how. What is Big Bad Con? Like, what if you would narrow it down to, is it like networking? Is it like indie designers looking for a foothold? Like, how would you try to melt it down to like a couple sentences of what the vibe is?
So it's run by Evil Hat Games. Matt Mercer shows up. People from video game companies show up. There is definitely a networking element if you know who you're looking for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I am not necessarily that person. Like, I know people because the people around me start buzzing, you know, in the cafe area outside of the overpriced cafe area outside of the overpriced restaurant, you know, and people start buzzing and I learned something, you know, but it is a indie game hotbed. So people are out play testing indie games. People are running popular indie games. Lots of indie game designers are there. And it is a place where you might have a hard time if you have a hard on to play D&D.
Okay.
You know, like if you got to play D&D, there may be one or two games out of the, you know, couple hundred on the schedule. There may be 200 on the schedule. They also have a games on demand space, where some people are playing games you've heard of. Some people are play testing something they're, you know, thinking about pushing out in the world. So, yeah, it's a whole thing. I played Worldwide Wrestling. I played Coyote and Crow, and I'm working on a board game. So I actually played a couple board games.
Okay.
I played a game called Spirit Island.
Yeah, I heard it's like incredible. I haven't played it.
Is you know, incredible's like interesting. It doesn't say if it's good or bad. It is truly incredible.
I mean, it's one of sometimes things like it.
It
if
was a
it's something that
4-hour board
compels
game.
you or you're interested in,
Yeah.
it, you know, it can be fun, but it can also just be like mechanically interesting to play, but not fun to play for certain people.
We had so to your point of people who love games, it was being facilitated by someone who was not a player. They were a facilitator, and their whole thing for 4 hours was just telling us what we could do next.
Okay.
Um, because we didn't read the 100-page book
Sure.
that is the rules that go with it. Um, I haven't played a board game like that. Like I've played Axes and Allies. I played Risk. Um, I haven't had the joy of losing friends at Diplomacy.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was doing a lot of stuff. And just like RPGs, there's all of these conventions, um, ways of going about approaching the game, and these styles of games. And I've heard all these things over the years, and now that I'm thinking about poking a toe in the water, like it's really I'm just trying to get my head around this stuff.
Yeah.
What's a worker placement game? What's a deck building game? Like what does all this stuff mean? So I played Spirit Island, and I played Clank,
Mm.
which was a much more straightforward, easy to pick up game that I could probably play with my 10-year-old.
Yeah, I
You
have
know,
several versions of Clank and
right?
expansions. I really like because it's sort of a dungeon explorer plus deck builder, and I like
Yeah,
both of those. And it
yeah.
is like my kids like it as well. I recently picked up the new version, which has randomized rather than having a board, you have tiles, and as
Hmm.
you explore, you play them out. So there's a
That
random
that's
and
that's what we did,
yeah. So it's
and
called Catacombs, I think. So yeah, I actually quite like that game. I don't play it a lot, but I do enjoy it when I get to play it.
yeah, and so Spirit Island was a 4-hour game that felt like a 3-hour game, which is still too long
Hmm.
for a board game. And Clank was a 2-hour game that felt like a 1-hour game,
Okay.
which I thought was just right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on a game called Fabulous Freeman, which I'm endeavoring to make a fun African American history game.
Oh, okay.
I think there's a lot of things in, we pull from, European fantasy. We pull from there's a lot of Asian inspired board games. There's not a lot of happy African American games. I'm trying to make
Yeah. Okay. Well,
one.
best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that'll work out well. So you plan on going back? Is this going to be a yearly thing for you now?
Um, so you said a thing earlier about how there are games you go to for uh your business, your career as a designer.
Hmm.
And I made some decisions this year, and I am trying to, become a little more of a publisher and designer of games. I published and designed one game, and it was really hard and emotional.
Hmm.
You might know some of these feelings.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I took a couple years break, making very, very small games, little slight games. I'm not going to get art for this. We're just going to play it. um, we're going to figure out how this works, and then one day I'll pick it up. And wanting to move a little more into the business of publishing, there are cons that are not cons that like Big Bad Con or a Catacon. I went to Gamma last year, or I went to Gamma this year for my
Hmm.
first time, and
And
that is a
that's an
place
industry like truly an
that
industry convention, right? It's where game designers and publishers come together, not necessarily like players per se.
no, there's very little game playing. There are lots of market projections, lots of market charts.
Hmm.
There are lots of like people who manufacture games pitching their services. There are lots of distributors pitching their services, and they make the game designers go pay to go, and the friendly local game stores get to go for free.
Yeah.
And so you end up meeting people from across the country and around the world who might want to sell your game.
Gotcha.
Good people to know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the prospect of doing a board game, I found out in September, after I kind of locked in for Big Bad Con, that there's a thing called New York Toy Fair going on
Hmm.
the same weekend. And that's where it is not the Christmas Toy Fair, which happens, I think, in June, but it happens in June in Singapore. Like I'm not at that level,
Oh, yeah. No.
I hope one day, someday, ever, but I could swing a trip to New York. And so I will be trying to figure out the New York Toy Fair part if I have a board game in the world. Because that seems what I'm learning is that board games are toys and role-playing games are not toys.
Ooh. Okay. Can you unpack that a little
Nope,
bit? Okay.
I can't. I'm learning. I'm not understanding. I'm just, I'm just literally parroting what I'm hearing. So um, I hope my answer is I hope I get to go to Big Bad Con next year. That would be really cool. It's a great vibe. Um, you know, inshallah, we will see.
Okay.
It's not in my hands. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's last year I was very unnerved by like the kumbaya, like there's not going to be any drama vibe to it all. And this year I kind of felt safe and comfortable in it, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, they are clearly putting they're hanging their hat on this is an inclusive event, and
Yeah.
anyone who is okay with that is welcome.
Right, right. And you say anybody who's okay with that. And you know, I live in Los Angeles now. I'm from Oakland, right across the bay from San Francisco. I absolutely invited more than a dozen of my friends who were like, it's not my scene.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they like, Savage Worlds, they like Champions, they like D&D, they like a bunch of games that like you go to Big Bad Con to see what you can play.
Mm.
You don't go there to play a particular game. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and again, I would say Catacon it mirrors that as well. Like we have
Hmm.
a few games of D&D, we're gonna have a few games of Pathfinder, but the majority of our games are not those things.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of our selling points is people get to play games they've never played before, some they've never even heard of before.
Yeah.
So I think we married that or mirror that as well, just on a slightly smaller scale with less
And
celebrity.
and what's awesome is you're doing it in a totally different part of the world
Oh yeah,
because, you know, there was definitely a point where most of the people at Big Bad Con were either from the Bay Area or LA.
mm.
Like
Yeah,
it's not a big reach,
right.
to hop on a plane in Burbank, get off the plane in San Francisco, go hop on a 15-minute shuttle, and you're there. You left your house 3 hours ago. So it's awesome you're doing that sort of thing, kind of in Ohio, Kentucky area. So
Yeah, I mean, again, we have a much smaller reach, but we're hoping to grow
mhm.
again. We're still hoping this right now. It looks like this is going to be our best year ever in terms of attendance. That's certainly what we're targeting, what we're hoping for, what we're budgeting for. So hopefully it all works out. We actually got some very exciting news just this week. I haven't shared on the public yet. So the DCC, is the convention center that we use, is in Dayton, and they have basically their main exhibit hall is one giant room, just like most
Right.
convention halls, but it gets subdivided. And the room that we have always used is designated as Hall A or 101, and it is the smallest section of the big giant room. It's like
Hmm.
21,000 square feet,
Hmm.
more room than we need. We ring the hall with vendors. All the game tables are in the middle. And that's one of the things that people have said about our convention they like is that it is kind of contained where like if you play a game on Friday you're going to see all those people all weekend. So like if you had a great
right.
experience, like I played a game with Moe. Moe was cracking me up with his Scottish dwarf, and I'm just like, oh, I love what you were doing. I'm going to see you at 2 tables over playing a different game. I'm going to wave at you. I'm going to see you going to the vendor on Saturday. I'm going to see what you bought. But we've always wanted, like it's been I'm going to say me. I've always wanted to grow to the point where we need to move into the bigger room. Even if it's not to capacity, just having more room, we can spread our tables a little further apart. Just the feel of needing a bigger room is like a big step for me. We have yet to get there. Okay, very, very clear to say. And including this year, we have not grown to the point that we need that room. However, the DCC is going through some extensive remodeling. And unbeknownst to me, we had lost like a 15-foot section all the way up and down the room to a construction wall that they forgot to tell me. So I built my maps, I put my tables, and I said, here's where I want it. And they're like, you can't do that because you have 15 feet less on
you don't have the space.
You don't have the space for that. And I'm like, I've already sold every vendor spot. We've never done that before. We sold out every vendor spot during the Kickstarter. Woo! Usually we have a bunch left over. I'm like, I have already sold spots. I have to have this space. And because no one was using the larger room, they're going to let us use the larger room this year for free. Well, not for free, but no additional cost.
Right.
So I'm paying for what I always paid for, but we get to be in the big room. So normally that room is divided into 3. We usually have section 1. This year we get sections 2 and 3, which is what I've wanted the whole time. So we kind of get
like you got experience and you leveled up.
Kind of, yeah. But we also get this, we get this sort of trial, I guess, what it would look like, what it would feel like. How many people, because I'm a little worried that it's going to feel like we're understaffed or underpopulated because we have so much more room than we normally have. And if we don't fill the room up, is it going to feel weird, like isolated or whatever? But I think it's a really good test for us to say, is this actually a viable thing that we need to, because if it doesn't work out, then I'll be like, okay, well, I just don't have to worry about that. I don't need to worry about growing to that capacity. I can just worry about growing to our maximum in this room and then be done. Because again, the +1 here, +1 there, the sausage about a catacon is the DCC is by far our biggest expense. It's over 50% of our total budget every year. Going to that room would more than double that. So like we spend X on the DCC, X is already like 60% of our total budget. That room would be X times 2.
Right.
So it's a huge expense to us to go in that room. And if it's just not something we need to worry about, that actually, in a lot of ways, makes my life easier.
Yeah, it takes some pressure off.
It takes a lot of pressure off of needing, we got to grow. What's our growth? If I can just be like, okay, we're going to cap, instead of trying to get to 750, we're going to cap at 500. I know my costs. I can base everything off that. And I'll be like, okay, as long as we get 500 a year, perfect. So there's actually, it's kind of a no risk opportunity for us to try this out. So I'm very excited about the fact that it didn't cost us any extra to try it. But knowing me the way I do, I'm probably going to want to do it again next year. And I'll be like, okay, well, now we've got to raise an additional X, which is not cheap, let me tell you.
Right.
Especially when you're in Dayton, Ohio, and your reach is much smaller than like the Bay Area, So
yeah.
But yeah, so again, I'll just keep on that train. So our convention is November 3rd, 4th, and 5th this year. Our Kickstarter was the best Kickstarter. Well, second best ever. It was the best ever. Sorry. We've ever had. We sold out of vendor spots. We sold out of demo spots, badge sales. Everything was up, and badges are on sale now. People can go get badges. I think last time I checked, we had 180 events. 105 were RPGs. I think so far we have 2 Pathfinder games and like 4 D&D games. Everything else is something else.
Wow.
Forbidden Lands, Dread, Cypher System, Savage Worlds, Champions, Marvel superheroes. Again, it's absolutely the place to go if you want to try out RPGs. And not necessarily, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's not necessarily like you're a school of fish and you're role-playing through a tsunami. Like there are games out there where you have those like very niche experiences. These are still the games that where you've have swords and you fight dragons, but it's not necessarily the big ones that you've thought of. There are some weird games like that. I run some weird games like that, but you know, it's a great place to kind of stretch your wings a little bit and try some other games, but it's not such a huge departure maybe from your comfort zone if you are coming from D&D and you want to try like, well, Dragonbane. It's a lot like D&D, but it's got some differences. Maybe you'll try that. 13th Age, it's like a cousin to D&D, you know, that type of thing. So a lot of board games. We're going to have the biggest raffle we've ever had. We got more prizes than we've ever had before. I don't know what our play to win situation. Are you familiar with play to win? Do they have that at Big Bad Con? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
They may have.
You probably wasn't something you were doing.
They had a lot of stuff I didn't get a chance to experience.
And you can't do it all at a convention. But so we partner with a group called Double Exposure. They're the same group that actually hosts Metatopia.
My buddy Darren Watts, who passed away this year, he used to be a big wig over there.
Okay.
He founded DexCon.
They run, I think, DexCon and Metatopia.
Yeah.
So Avi and Vincent are the two that I work with. So basically, they work with publishers, and the publishers send out free games to conventions like us based on attendance and say, here's 20, 30 different games. And we set up, it's kind of like a raffle where you get to try the game. So you come up and give an ID and you take any game on the table, you go play it. And if you're like, hey, that was fun, I'd like to own that. When you return it, you get to put in a raffle ticket for just the game that you played. And every time you play it, you get a new raffle ticket. Everyone at the table who plays can put it in. So if it's a 5-player game, all 5 of you can drop a ticket in there. And we also supplement that. So I'll probably get, I'm going to guess about 25 to 30 games because we are a little bigger this year than last year. And then I've bought 5 or 10 games that I wanted to be played because the games I enjoy. I've had a few sponsors who donate games and say you can, use some for your library, some for prizes, some for play to win. So whatever, we're going to have about 35 to 40 games where people can play to win, which is the most we've ever had. So like everything is bigger this year than before. We just need enough people to show up to play the games. Cause that's honestly, I know and all honesty, I'm not like trying to oversell it. Our biggest opportunity is we don't have enough people for what we offer. Like every year we have dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen games that we end up canceling because we don't have enough players. And it's not that nobody wants that game. It's just they've already picked other games.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, well, you can just cancel your game and you as a GM get to jump in and play something. Like that's, it's not your fault. But we need another 100 to 200 players to fill in all the games that we already have offered. And again, that's all we're just trying to get more people. But it's Dayton, Ohio, November. It's not sexy.
I keep wanting to say I'm coming to a catacon.
You should, man.
Then I keep asking questions like, is it cold?
Oh, it depends. Last year it was like 70 and people were wearing shorts, and the year before it was like -5. So it's very hit or miss. So, but yeah, we'd love to have you come out. Can't afford to fly you for free, but I'll give you a hotel room with like 9 other people.
Good looking. Okay. I used to be in the Army. I've slept with more men.
That is kind of our motto at the RPG Academy is it's asses and elbows. So like whenever we go to conventions, we'll get 9 or 10 people, throw them in a room. That way it's the cheapest possible. And I mean, we're only in there for like 3 hours a night anyways. So that's the way it works. But that's always my thing is that I can't afford to fly you out. But if you want to, you can have a free spot on the floor if you want it.
Wow, you're making me want to cash in, credit with the wife. We'll see how the next week or two go. All
right, just let me know. Open invite this year, next year. But I do hope anybody's listening. I assume anybody listening to this has already either knows about a catacon and has come or is just never going to come already. But it is absolutely a labor of love. I still have yet to make of course, over the course of all of them, I'm still in the hole total. Like I've had a couple of years where we made money, but I've had other years where we didn't. So this is not like a thing I do to make money. This is a thing I do because my personality is I love providing places for people to have fun. And this is like that writ large. Now I want to make money someday. Like don't get me wrong. If I make money, I won't be upset about it. But our goal every year is to break even. Like if we can just pay all of our bills and have zero debt at the end of every year, we consider that a success. Nobody gets paid, including me. Nobody gets paid. Everybody there is volunteer. Again, I get a hotel room, and anyone who wants to use it can. And I usually buy pizza for everybody once or twice. Like that's what the volunteers get for helping out. So I don't know what, but it seems like it's important to me. Like if someone handed me $1 million tomorrow and said, "Here's run a catacon for the rest of your life," I would, but I'm not doing it to try to get paid
for the money.
Sense.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, the reason I'm part of RPG Academy is because of your passion and just being an awesome person. So like,
Aww.
you know, I that it shows, one day I was just a listener and I was just like, I like this guy.
my gravity well sucked another person into the orbit,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
now you do shows because that's the way I operate. But again,
Come
I
to the
don't
dark
ever
side.
want to like I love Gen Con. The reason the Catacon exists is because I went to Gen Con and I loved Gen Con, and then I went to Origins and I loved Origins. I've been to SensiCon, I love it. I've been to Lexicon, I love it. I love conventions. It's just a thing I do, and the Catacon is just one small part of what I like to do in the world and provide games and stuff. So I'm not trying to say it's better than any other con or worse than any other con, but it's really good con. Like it's a good one. It may not be the best one, but it's a good one. And I think if people were to give it a shot, they would probably have a good time. So maybe there's at least one person listening today for you who's like, okay, all right.
Pushing over the edge.
Yeah, pushing over the edge. But it's a really good time. It's a ton of fun. I'm running Star Wars Dread this year. I'm hanging up Scooby-Doo Dread. Probably not forever, but for a little while. I've ran it so many times. Right. So Chris and I are developing a Star Wars Dread that is going to be similar, very, very much like a LARP. Like you're basically role-playing the whole time, and there's a little bit of Jenga in there. Right. And I got to play test that adventure at the faculty retreat. Definitely have some things I got to work out, but it was still successful. Everybody had a good time. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm doing my Murder Mystery LARP, which I've done several years. Always a good time.
Do you guys get much LARP out there for a Catacon?
No, we don't have any. And it's not even so it's a murder mystery. It's a D&D inspired murder mystery game where we ask people to dress up. It's not required that you dress up, but most people do. And then we have 4 or 5 NPCs that we have a butler. Usually dresses up like a butler. We have a chef, we have an apron and a hat. We have the lady of the house and the Lord and lady of the house. They like maybe dress more like in a suit than like a cloak, but people dress up. But basically it's a murder mystery sort of thing. And then we have a couple hours, we buy some cake. So you get free cake. So why not come for that? But we don't have any actual hardcore LARPs.
Yeah.
Mine is just like a costumed. It also involves Jenga, so because I really like Jenga. But probably the thing that I'm most excited for is the families coming out this year. This is the first year ever my wife will be there. I've gone to a couple conventions with my boys and played games, but they are both running events this year. John is running an RPG session, and Jacob is going to run some werewolf in the afternoons. And I'm very excited. I'm nervous. I'm actually very nervous. But I'm excited to share this part of my life with my boys. The wife does not care at all. She's coming because the boys are coming. She loves me, but she doesn't get this at all. She's not into it at all. But
I have one of those.
I love her. Great partner. But that's just not her thing. But, again, you know how this works. I've always wanted my kids to want to do this stuff with me. I had a very weird relationship with my dad. We were totally estranged for the last 6 years of his life, never said a word. I got like a text like, hey, he's dead. Like, that's just the way it worked. But when I was little, I worshiped my dad. He was my hero. I loved, I would do anything for him. He was such an important figure in my life. And I don't want that same trajectory for my kids. So I was very worried that if I pushed them too hard, if I made it too important, if I just lost my temper, if they didn't play the way I wanted them to play, that it would go from being this thing that we do as a family that I love to this conflict, this like pressure point between us. And so far, I have navigated those waters expertly because both my kids love playing games. John is running games for his friends. He runs a regular D&D group with some friends at school, and Jacob actually has ran a couple of games as well, but he doesn't seem to be as into the running as playing. So the first time we went to a con together, like I almost cried. Like I took them, like we sat down about tickets. Like it was to get to play where we all played together. Like I wasn't running, they weren't running. We got to play together was a huge thing. And this next step of them running events at the convention I run, like I'm kind of getting emotional now talking about it. Like I'm so excited, but I'm also
like,
worried that it could.
I'm dadding good.
I know
I'm dadding good.
But it could go horrible too. Like if they have a terrible experience, you know. But it's exciting. I'm super excited about it. Looking forward to it, and I don't know, I'll have things to say, good, bad, or indifferent after it's over. But it's a big deal for me and my family, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, our local LA con, I took my son. They on Sunday afternoons, they have a kids game time, and I've been seeing it, and like you have kids in there like up 6 years old sometimes. And so I took my kid this year and he was 10, and he had a ball. He sees me gaming all the time. I usually go in another room because sometimes the game isn't family friendly.
Right.
But he sees me, zoom in all the time, especially with COVID and all that stuff. I don't go out of the house and do it all in person anymore. And he's curious, but likewise, I'm like, I'm not pushing on this on you. This is something you will choose. And if you don't, it's like the pressure for me is less, because I'm like, gaming is some weird stuff, dude. And a lot of people, like, it is as popular as it's ever been.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people just still don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm okay with that. And so I'm like, if you choose this path, good on you. Right. And if you don't, good on you. We're good.
Like I would be disappointed if my kids didn't, but I wouldn't be upset. Like I wouldn't be angry or mad, but I would be like, because it's a thing we do together. It's not just the game. And I started, at least for me, I started with board games. And then No Thank You Evil was the first RPG that we played.
Yeah.
And, I think both my kids are imaginative. They both like to read. And so I think that really kind of captured their imagination where they could just, have these adventures. But that's like one of my favorite things to do is just like after dinner, a couple nights a week, we'll just pull out a game and play it. And the wife's not hardcore into it, but she'll play a few games if there's certain
sometimes,
ones. Yeah. So it's like, it's a big thing for me just to spend time with my family playing these games. So it's,
and you guys were all locked up in the house for a couple of years. So
it was a whole thing.
You didn't have a lot to do.
Yeah. So it's something for some people, I'm sure it's like watching sports. For some people, it's hunting, fishing. Like, I don't think mine's better or worse, but that is my thing that I enjoy spending time with my kids doing. And it just warms my heart that they're into it. But much like when I was little, I hunted and fished with my dad. And there was a point where I just like didn't want to do that anymore. And that was kind of the start of where our paths diverged. So, I'm trying to hang on loosely that if one of my boys gets a little older and is like, I'm not really into that anymore.
You had a good time.
I did. I absolutely had a good time.
And trust me, he'll be back.
I hope so. So no one had jumped into chat for a long time, so I had kind of quit looking at it, and then Brodabush jumped in. So my apologies, Brodabush. I don't know how long ago you commented, but they basically said hello, and they said, I agree. I'll assume it was something you said they agreed with because I'm an idiot. But thank you, Brodabush, for hanging out with us. Actually, this year, his son is going to be demoing a game. So Brodabush isn't a game designer, at least not officially that I know of, but just really likes a particular game. And so he got a demo table just to show off this game. And I guess his son is going to be there with him demoing it as well. So it's,
and let me tell you, man, that is so much more pure, than like the person who's designing the game. Because I'm sure you may have gotten there. You may still have some gas in the tank, but you design a game, you get tired of running that damn game. I want to run something else. And but at a certain point, it's your job. You've committed to this thing, and now this is the path you've chosen. And I think it's awesome when people like decide they find something, they want to be a fan of it. They're not responsible for it, and they just want to lean in and share. That's awesome.
Sorry, and again, I think that just fills into the Academaniacs thing. People play games there because they love them and they want to share them. That's just an extension or an example of that philosophy that I think we do so well. But I did want to comment on Sean about not playing your own game, because I've mentioned this before. Like I have these weird anxieties. I know that about myself. I'm a weird person. Everybody's weird in their own way, right? But like at Christmas, I don't like it when people look at me when I open presents. Like if you bought me a present, Mo, say here's a present, and I open it and I get truly touched by this gift. It was either expensive or it was like something I really wanted, or like showed that you understood me in a way. I would get emotional, and I don't want you to see that. Like I have anxiety. So I'm the person that I will snipe and open up presents while other people are open presents. And then it's like, I'm done. And I try to hide that, right? And so I have found that when I play Action 12 Cinema, if I'm actually playing it, it's the same way. It makes me very uncomfortable, to be perfectly honest, playing the game. Because there's always a part of me that's like, no one's having fun. Or if they are acting like they're having fun, they're only acting because they just don't want to hurt my feelings. So I am just miserable all the time when I play my game. So I don't play it a lot because it makes me so uncomfortable. Even if other people are having fun, my anxiety's like, well, they're lying. They just don't want to hurt my feelings. So I'd much rather other people go play. I'm not involved, and they come back and tell me what happened, good or bad. Like that's fine, but being there, no, not a fan at all.
Couple things. Number one,
I need therapy. I know.
Yeah. And I took this medicine myself, and a lot of things balanced out for me. Number two, I played your game, dude. Your game's fun, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Like move on.
Well, and I'm trying. Like it's almost done. We locked the book a week ago. I put it on the Kickstarter. I'm giving 2 weeks for people to find typos. So far, no one has either found them or no one's looking, one or the other, but no one has said anything. So next Wednesday, it'll be done one way or the other. And then we go to the printers, which I have no idea how long or expensive that's going to be. So it'll be fun. But yeah.
Well, let's talk offline about that.
Yeah,
but yes. But yeah, man, like you're doing a thing. And I say this as somebody who's played games that weren't fun. Like the game wasn't fun. Like I definitely have a flavor of thing that I like. I don't like all things. Yeah. And like Action 12 Cinema does the thing, man.
Well, thank you. And it uses D12s. Business.
And it uses D12s.
Yeah. All right. So we're coming to about the end of the hour here. I want to be respectful of your time, and I got things going on. So lessons learned. If somebody's going to go to Big Bad Con for the first time next year, what advice would you give them?
Read the emails, get on a Discard, and pre-read your games. I don't like pre-regging. I like getting to a con and being a little spontaneous. It is not a spontaneous con. So that if I had a complaint, it would be that. Go with the open mind, but also go knowing that like your weird will be welcome. At least I saw lots of weird that seemed welcome, and my weird was welcome. And so, you should not go if you want to get signatures from all the people that you think are famous and cool, because that is absolutely frowned upon. They have 2 panels, like 2 whole announcements saying, like literally, if someone is looking at you and they smile, you can go up and talk to them. And otherwise, to have a conversation, try not to interrupt, it's a networking thing, but I know there's a lot of Asperger's in the RPG space. I know there's a lot of anxiety in the RPG space. Be friendly, and if people are friendly back, down the road, kind of shoot your shot. Don't go up to the guy who runs Evil Hat Games and say, hey, you should publish my game. It's hey, Matt Mercer, I want to be on your show. Like enjoy the atmosphere. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, I think that would be the only big faux pas. But you know, it's a cool scene. It's a cool vibe. You're gonna like be open to some weird, cool stuff, and yeah, like
I've said it before. I'm a fan of conventions. Gen Con changed my life for the better
hmm
in some ways because now that I created a catacon, it's a huge anxiety for me. But I love going to cons. I go to all the cons I can. I think I go to
right,
like 4 or 5 cons every year. I run a convention. I do 2 faculty retreats, which are basically like
right,
mini cons with just my personal
right,
friends. And I want people to go to as many. If it's not mine, go to a con. And I can't speak to all of them. There might be some terrible ones out there, but my
yeah,
experience has generally been very positive. I love playing games I've never played before, or games I don't haven't had a chance to play a lot. I love to get to play with people like my kids who I don't normally
hmm
get to play side by side with. So the cons allow me to be a player with them, and we get to. The dynamic is different than when I run for them, or they sometimes run for me. So do some Google searching. You
yeah,
will probably find a convention closer to you than you realize who
yep,
probably doesn't have a marketing budget and would love for you to know about them and show up. So, maybe check into it. I do like to pre-register because I like to, again, part of my anxiety, I like to know that I have things I'm going to do, but you
right,
can play it by ear, but you can see what's being offered. Like, is
right,
this a con where if you want to play D&D the whole time, are there 10 sessions of D&D every every segment, or is there no D&D? Is it, a Warhammer 40 miniature sort of thing? Um, you know, explore what's around you and support them because again, every small con like a catacon, there's thousands of them out there. They all want to
hmm
survive or thrive, and you could definitely make the difference.
and some of your friendly local game stores are having kind of game days,
yes, yep,
which are kind of mini cons where you can kind of go con for a day. And they want you to play the games because they want you to buy the
yep.
games, but like they have games for you to play.
Hmm. So Brodo mentioned they love a Gen Con, and last year was their first Academicon, and they had a
Mhm.
really good time. And then Scurby Nave jumped in saying they only go to small cons. Of those, Academicon is their favorite. So thank you very much for that.
There we go.
Appreciate it. All right, Mo. So wrap it up. Where can
I
people find you? Where can they check out your games, your other
Well,
podcasts?
apparently, a company is publishing a game of mine, Bullet in the Blank.
Ew, yes.
Um,
I have a copy of that will be a play to win at Academicon this year. Yeah.
hey, so if if you play it and you like it, be great if you could support. I think it's on BackerKit, but you'll see a link on my website, ashyfeet.com. ASHYFEET is where you could find me. You can find me on Show and Tell. Actually, I think next week is going to be Slug Blaster, which by some accounts was the hit of Big Bad Con,
Ooh, okay.
kickstarting as we speak. And yeah, I'm all over the place, unfortunately. But you could find me at ashyfeet.com, ashyfeet1 on Twitter. I just made it onto Blue Sky.
Nice. Yay,
Yay!
welcome.
I don't know what that means.
It's basically Twitter from 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not awful yet.
um and yeah, reach out and let me know what you think of Show and Tell.
Yeah.
I'd love some feedback. I'd love some thoughts.
I would
Uh
like that as well. Again, I think we have our core audience who's been with us for a very long time, so
yeah,
they probably have already written their reviews, but
right.
send an
Is
email.
anybody actually listening?
Yes, it's not a whole lot of people anymore, but
Right,
there are
right, right,
still
right.
people who listen to our shows.
Right,
But
right,
yeah,
right.
email the RPG Academy at Gmail. If you have a game or something coming up,
Yeah.
no promises. Like I said, we get so many requests, we can't fulfill them all, but we do, we at least look into all of them. Like we check out the
hmm
game and see what our schedule is. So you could also email me directly, the RPG Academy at Gmail, and I forward all those to Mo, and then Mo decides what he wants to talk about. But yeah, thanks for Scurvy Nave and Broda Bush for hanging out. If there's anybody else lurking, thank you for doing that. We normally do the show every other Wednesday. It's usually a little different. We follow the regular detention schedule, but with Chris being out, Mo was kind enough to jump in. I got a Catacon come up. It's a 1 month from tomorrow. So 29 days from today will be Thursday's the setup day. So technically 2 days, but it's really close. It's kind of scary how close it is. Registration opens this coming Saturday. So if you want to register, probably should have a badge by Saturday. You can still get them later, but it's harder to get into stuff after that initial rush. It'll be kind of wild for a little while
Right.
there. But I'm going to go get some sleep. Moe, thank you so much. Thank you for doing the show and tell. I really appreciate you stepping up. I'm really enjoying what you're doing with it. Thank you, everybody in the chat. And just remember, if you're having fun,
you're doing it right.
Thanks. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.